Hey, thanks so much for finding the video. Do us a favor. If you haven't done so yet, please subscribe. And be sure to leave your comment. We love to interact. Enjoy the video. I want to start. We'll get to the Super Bowl. We'll get to signing day, all that stuff. I want to start, though, by sort of going chronologically back to the weekend with the Matt Stafford deal. So a lot of Saints fans, I think we talked about it a bunch last week, were really hoping that this would be an option for New Orleans, and apparently it wasn't. So let's first start with the deal itself and what LA gave up to get Stafford. What was your reaction?
I was dumb enough. I wrote a column that I thought that the going price, and I kind of put it a little bit more than I thought. I said it would cost you a first, a third, and another player, either a rotation player or a guy in the final year of his contract. It costs more than that.
Yeah.
No, it was expensive, but it goes to show the Rams have never, under Sean McVay, valued those first-round picks like other teams do. And they got a lot of good young players on that football team, and you got a young defensive team, and your defense is really good, and you got a running game. And Akers looks to be the guy, and it looks as though Whitworth is going to return another season. Got some young weapons. I think similar to New Orleans and Tampa, they took all their betting chips and threw it in the middle of the table and said, you know what, we got to do it over the next year or two. And that's what we're going to do. And we're going to try to hit on some of the early to mid-round picks that we still have, and also maybe try to hit in free agency a little bit here and there. But, Matt, that was a big deal. What surprised me more than the deal was how many teams were involved.
Yeah.
Because you probably had 7 or 8 teams we're hearing that were really active. Here's the other thing, and I know it goes on in the NFL. If you know about 7 or 8 teams that were really active trying to make that deal, what about the 7 or 8 teams that made a call but won't admit it? Give me the Bible. I won't put my hand quite on it. I'll put it right above it like a hover and swear to you I had no interest. But they made a call. What would it costing if we try to make that deal for Stafford? And many of them were, whoa, that's a little bit out of my price range. Ain't going to do it. So goes back to what I said last week. In this league, you either have one or you're looking for one at quarterback. You can con yourself into believing you got the guy. But there's just a handful of those guys walking this earth. Now, every once in a while, there's an exception to the rule. And we've seen it. Well, we saw with the Eagles a couple years back. They won a lot with Carson, and then Nick comes in and he rolls it through. Even Trent Dilfer with a great Ravens defense. And Trent, and he would admit it. He was an average, or maybe a slightly above average quarterback. And they won it. And we've seen the Washington team win it with Theismann, who was a really good player. Doug Williams was a really good player. And Mark Rippon was an average player. But he had a great season. So those things do happen. But, Matt, just look at the guys who have won it. And it's Mahomes and Brady and Mannings, so to speak, plural, and Russell Wilson. That's not a long list of those guys over the last 10 or 11 years. And so the Rams feel Stafford is the final piece of the puzzle that they can put in, and that he can win big for them and he can get them there. And they feel as though we've seen enough of Jared Goff. We made a bad decision extending the contract, and we deal him off. And similar to an NBA deal, they gave him a little bit of cap relief. They took that contract off your hands.
Yeah.
And so it was surprising, the amount. I didn't think it would be quite that much. What surprised me is what we know in those 7 or 8 teams and what they were trying to do to get Stafford, and also what we don't know, because there's probably just as many that did make that call. And when they found out the asking price, well, man, a little bit too rich for my blood. I'm out. I'm not playing in this card game. I'm out of here.
You think the Saints were one of those, Mike?
Yeah, come on. You can't tell me. Now, again, to say we made a call and talked about it, yeah, you got your hand slightly above the Bible. You know what I mean? If you had it in court. Come on, I'm sure there were 15 to 16 teams that made that phone call, if not more, to say what would it cost, and when they found out, no, I'm not getting involved. And so that does happen in this league, and then you would have the ability to say, we had no interest. You had no interest because you found out how much it cost you. That's just like people that tell you all the time, I'm looking for a new house, and they show you what they're looking to buy, and you say, man, that's sort of pricey. And oh, yeah, but I still like it. And they end up staying in the same house they've lived in for the last 25 years.
Well, Mike, do you think that the Saints should have, well, obviously they didn't have a quarterback that they could offer like the Rams did with Goff, but would the Saints have been wise to make a deal like that? A couple of future ones, a 3, and a player?
Listen, for you to get a guy that you believe in, you're going to have to give up a lot. Now, what that deal incorporated was you got 2 1s and a 3, but you also got some cap relief on a player that you saddled yourself with. And so, in essence, you got a team that bought you a little bit of cap relief, like you see it in the NBA. Mm-hmm. So it had the best of every world. For the Rams standpoint, it had the best of every world. Now, there's a lot of reports out of Washington that maybe that their offer may have been even more from a draft start standpoint than what was offered. And the fact Carolina, there's certainly rumblings there that Matt Rule wanted him too. And listen, they have the 8th pick in the draft?
Yep.
You don't have to wait a year. You don't have to wait to 2022 and 2023. You'd have got that much quicker in a top 10 pick. Now, where are you going to pick at if you're the Lions with those Rams picks?
Yep.
Look where you're going to pick. So if you're the Saints, you got to offer more because you know what? If I trade you off a top quarterback, and I think Stafford's the guy, okay, the 28th pick may be the earliest pick you get in round 1. And so you're going to have to pay more. And so I think that was also part of the deal, understanding where you're going to get those picks. And here's the other thing. And I had this conversation a couple years back with Jimmy Johnson when he visited New Orleans. And one of the things Jimmy was saying is, listen, draft picks are great. And he said, we made it work in Dallas. But what happened to other teams that have made these type deals? They end up with all these picks, and it don't turn out right. And you got to pick the right player. Now, you got to be smart. You got to get really good fit players. You got to be clever how to maneuver around the draft board. Smart, clever, really good fit players. Would you put that in the resume of the Detroit Lions?
I knew where you were going, man. No, they're one of the worst organizations in the league, have been for decades.
I tell this to A-Bear. That's why they like him in Michigan. He's the last guy to win them a championship in football. He won it with the Michigan Panthers. but they love him there. It's almost like salami, bologna sort of deal. Okay, he won it. The last guy before that was Bobby Lane. So you got to understand, they clamoring for it, and they have made one goofball mistake after the other, after the other, after the other. Yes, they've gotten into the playoffs some years, and, man, listen, when you got a guy like Barry Sanders and, Megatron, he was a force of nature when he was there. I remember early 70s, late 60s, early 70s, they had some pretty good teams in Detroit. They were not flashy, but their defense was really good. Greg Landry was their quarterback. They could run the football. Mel Farr was a really good runner back then. But, man, they didn't go nowhere. And so I think today is a little bit different feel on it. I think for a lot of young GMs entering the league, their deal is, I can find a quarterback that can win me games, but I need a guy. I need someone special. Matt, look at what's happened in the NFC and AFC today. And when you kind of wield it a little bit, Mahomes, young quarterback, AFC. Josh Allen, young quarterback, AFC. And listen, if they get a running game around him and their defense gets a player or two, man, they're going to be major players in the AFC.
Mm-hmm.
Major. And look the competition now in the AFC East. I ain't got to stare at Brady twice a year. You know, I can watch him on TV now, which is even better if I don't have to play him. You think about Justin Herbert with the L.A. Chargers. Man, if Cincinnati can do something around Joe Burrow, you got a signature player there. Baker Mayfield, I think, is a pretty doggone good quarterback, and he's got some pieces around him out in Cleveland. Got a lot of young guys. Tua in Miami is still waiting to see exactly what happens there with him. You got a lot of guys that are really young and with a chance to really be big time. Look in the NFC what you got. Just look in the NFC South. You got, a 41-year-old Drew Brees. You got a 40-something-year-old Tom Brady. You got a late 30s Matt Ryan. You got Carolina, who got a bridge guy, and no pun intended.
Right, and Teddy. I got you.
But he's the bridge to the next quarterback. You're seeing it pass in front of your very eyes. Matt Rule and Joe Brady says, "Hey, listen, Teddy's a nice player, but he ain't winning us nothing. We got to go find ourselves a guy." The age of the quarterbacks now, in the NFC is a little bit different than the AFC. Now, again, Roethlisberger's got some age on him in Pittsburgh, and you can tell by his play. But, man, how it has dramatically now swung to the AFC. And guess where Trevor Lawrence is going?
To Jacksonville. Mike, I'm not sure if you even mentioned Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, and Lamar out in Baltimore. And that is another guy there that you can see has got some big-time talents. So, you just list them one after the other. Look at the most critical position on the field and how it swung dramatically youth-wise to the AFC and how much age they got in the NFC. So you know what's going to happen. Those NFC teams are, man, when Breeze gets a certain age, man, we got to do something. Same thing with Atlanta, man. They're thinking about maybe picking a quarterback in round one. Carolina, no question about it, thinking about picking a quarterback in the first round and thinking about moving up to get a guy with the 8th overall pick, and where I think you'll have 4 quarterbacks go in the top 10. And I'll say this, I think you may have 4 quarterbacks go in the top 8.
Wow.
In this year's draft. That's how coveted that spot is at that particular position. So, and the Saints are in a spot where, you know what, it's going to be a bridge. You're going to bring in a guy that's going to be, or have a guy that's going to be your bridge to the next guy.
Mike, it's not going to be a Wild Kingdom Sunday at Raymond James Stadium. There's going to be about 22,000 people there, but they're going to play a game, and it'll be Super Bowl 55. Kind of looking forward to it. I'm fascinated by the matchup, Mike. You got the all-time greatest and then the young gun who's trying to maybe be the next greatest. So let's start with Bucs offense against Chiefs defense. How does that matchup look on Sunday?
You got to be able to run the football. That's been one of the things since the Saints just totally wiped them out midseason. And even Kansas City did it. They've shown a little bit more patience running the football, which tells me one thing: Arians ain't calling the plays. It's Leftwich who's taking care of that. And I think it was sort of a meeting of the minds where Brady said, "Listen, enough's enough. We can't just keep slinging this. No risk it, no biscuit. That don't make any sense. Let's just do some of the things that helped us win in New England, and that was to run the football. That was to throw the football out in the flat to the backs." Haven't we seen that? Haven't they got the tight ends more involved, the running backs more involved? They get Leonard more involved in catching it, or Ronald Jones, they're running it. They've shown a little bit of toughness. So for the Chiefs, and this may sound crazy, my thing is, if I stop the run, then I say, Brady, you got to beat me every play throwing it. You got to beat me every play throwing it. And I think that's kind of the mindset of the Chiefs defense. You know what? you're not going to pound away at us. We saw that was successful. It was successful against the Saints. It was successful against the Packers. And, here's the crazy part when you think about it, that Brady, 3 consecutive turnovers of how good the Bucs defense was to shut down the Packers running game. They didn't let that go off. They shut that down. So we can talk about slinging it, but first things first, if I'm the Chiefs, I got to stop that running game because I think they're going to give you not a teaspoon. I think they're going to give you a tablespoon size of the running game. And if I can shut that down and slow it down and force you to say, okay, Brady, you beat us throwing it. Because I know where you are in the pocket. Mahomes, I'm not real sure where he's going to end up. But I know where Brady's going to be in the pocket. I think that would be successful. So for the Bucs, they got to be able to get a running game going. It's been a big part of that success down the stretch in those 7 straight wins. And for the Chiefs, they got to slow that down. I just think that's a big key to this football game because both guys are going to make plays throwing it. Come on, you're not going to stop them. They're going to make plays. Look, the playmakers on both sides of the football. But I can't let you pound it away at me because that's when I think the Bucs have an advantage. The Bucs running game is better than the Chiefs running game at this stage, especially without your 2 starting tackles.
Mike, that was going to be where I wanted to transition. When you look at Kansas City's offense against that Tampa defense, let's start on the line. How big of a deal? No Eric Fisher had the Achilles injury in the NFC Championship or the AFC Championship game. How big of a deal is that for Kansas City?
That's a big deal. I don't care who you are. When you lose your starting left tackle, that is a big deal. That's the blind side of Mahomes, and I know he can get away, but you're gonna have to throw the football from the pocket sometimes. You can't have that be leaky. You can't have that be a colander for you. You got to, and you might have to give him some help with a back as a chip or maybe a tight end. But you don't necessarily want to use Kelsey in that spot because he's the big mismatch on the other end. So I'm just telling you, Matt, that's a big one. Losing Fisher, he was really a good player, underrated because of all the other weapons they have. When you think about, you got Mahomes and you got Clyde in the backfield and then you got Tyreek Hill and you got Kelsey, you're talking about a left tackle, but he's important. And so you're going to have to give him some help. And also, too, you're going to have to move Patrick a little bit. I think he likes moving a little bit here and there. But he is very comfortable throwing the football from the pocket. For a young quarterback, he is very comfortable throwing it from there. Now, a lot of them are a little bit antsy. They much rather be on the move, moving left, moving right. One thing with Mahomes, he's a little bit different in that, I'll move around and throw it, but I'm also real comfortable throwing that football from the pocket. And you're going to have to move him. So losing Eric is big at that left tackle position because he just sort of stoned everybody at that point. And you think about, they lost the doctor early. He didn't come to training camp. He was treating COVID. They didn't have him. They're starting offensive guard. And then you lose Schwartz and you lose Fisher. Man, you running out of linemen. That would be like, okay, the Saints playing in the game against the Bucs, and Teron Armstead and Ryan Ramczyk ain't playing.
Oof.
Just think how you'd feel then. Well, that's what the Chiefs are in. I mean, they're in that spot where you got backup tackles playing there. Now, again, Mahomes can make something happen, and he's unique. Elway's the only guy I could see who could do it like that. That he just makes things happen on his own. The ball comes out funny and everything else, and he can run with it if he needs to. But it's going to be important for them to give Pat a little bit of time to throw it. And I pick on Carlton Davis at corner. I just think he's the weak link in the chain for him at that cornerback position. I'm going after him. And occasionally he has some big games, but I'm going after him. He got torched when they played in the regular season. He didn't get beat. He's still trying to get that fire off of him. I mean, Tyreek Hill was running past him like, he was going 30 miles an hour on a 70-mile lane, and Tyreek was going 68. He just ran right past him time after time after time. They're going to have to give Colton some help. He's not going to be able to handle Tyreek Hill by himself. So if you do that and you swing coverage to that side, you know what that tells me? Then I can get Kelce over the middle to make a big play. Because now you're not going to have that over-the-top coverage help. I can get Kelce over the middle, and that's what he wants, especially down in distance situation. We talked about it before the Saints game, and it has stayed true. When you watch film of the Chiefs and it's 3rd and 7, his eyes are watching Kelce the entire time. He's watching him. Now, occasionally thinks he can hit the big play with Hill, but he's watching Travis. So if you got to swing coverage, because I don't think you can leave Colton on him one-on-one in the entire game. You can't do it. He's going to get beat. So if you give him some over-the-top help, then I'm getting the ball like Travis, and then he's over the middle. And you got one-on-one coverage. Normally, that's not real good for a defender to get him. You need a little bit of help there. But both defenses have played well. Certainly Todd Bowles, I think, has done a really good job in piecing that together. And your linebacking core with Levante David and Devin. Tevin's been on a tear at that linebacker position. But, it's also Antoine Winfield. You drafted him in round 2. A lot of people, man, he's small. Only thing is, yeah, he's short, but he can play. He's got great ball instincts. So you're trying to move him a little bit from a coverage standpoint. You're trying to move him. But you know what? They better get to Mahomes. They better get a pass rush. And the potential is there without the 2 starting tackles. But if you give him time, Matt, he's going to shred you.
Yeah. He's
going to shred any defense out there. He's just really good at that, and his anticipation skills, his accuracy, his smarts. But I think one big thing with a quarterback, his decision-making process under pressure. Okay, it's a short sample. I've done this over 30 years. He's as good at it as anybody I've ever seen. That ability to process what's happening out on that field and doing it quickly and getting the ball out there. He can do it as well as anybody I've seen, in my lifetime of how well he could do it. Now, you couldn't convince my dad that. He was an automatic Otto fan. Nobody's better than Otto Graham. And he watched Bradshaw and Staubach and, Aikman and Montana, but nobody was better than automatic Otto. Well, you may be seeing a guy that could do it like that. I mean, he's really a special player. And so the thing is, you got to put pressure on him.
Mike D. Saints added Kris Richard to the staff this week to replace Aaron Glenn as the secondaries coach. Thoughts on the move?
I like it. I've heard from enough people that have coached with him and players that have played under him. He's a terrific defensive secondary coach. He's a very emotional guy. Now, Aaron Glenn's sort of a cool cat. I mean, kind of nothing sort of ruffles his feathers. Man, one thing with Kris, he's a live wire, no insulation. I mean, he's going to let you know, and he's demonstrative about it. But everything I've heard about him, Matt, is he's a terrific secondary coach. He understands the game well, relates very well to players. And he's a guy that, he sat out last year. He had some interviews. I know his name's been linked to LSU not once but twice. But I think as a secondary coach, he is really good. And I think that's a nice pickup. Aaron Glenn's a big chunk come out of there. And, and Sean has told us on the coaches show numerous times that he thinks that Aaron Glenn is going to be a head coach in the NFL. And so, are you losing a guy that you think will be a head coach somewhere in the NFL? That's a big chunk. You can say, oh, that's easily replaceable. Well, everybody's easily replaceable until they're not there.
Right.
But Kris Richard's a really good secondary coach. That was a good pickup for the Saints. Really was. When Dan left, the first thing that popped into my mind was the Saints are going to hire Jason Witten as their new tight ends coach. Because of Sean's connection to Jason when he was in Dallas. And then, Jason comes out, well, I'm a coach high school football, but I had NFL offers. Man, I knew, bang, right off the bat. I thought I was right on that. That I thought that maybe Sean had went to Jason, hey, listen, you want a coach come in here, take Dan's place? It's kind of a smooth transition, that sort of thing. But he decided to coach high school football instead. But Kris Richard's a good pickup for the Saints, really is.
Mike, and then there's more reports here that apparently Green Bay is interviewing Ryan Nielsen for their defensive coordinator job. So
okay, what I told you a couple of weeks back. Didn't I tell you? You see, people get all excited. They write in the paper, oh, what a bad look for the Saints. What a terrible look for LSU. That guy's going somewhere. Come on, you're not in the real world. If you think that's a bad look to stop a guy that you think eventually you're going to have to play against, and you offer him more money and you offer him a better title, then come on. You're not living in the real world. You're not living in the world that most people live in. Everybody that has a company, they want to keep their best guys. It wasn't going to take Ryan long. And I told you, no matter what happens, he's one and done. If he'd have been the coordinator at LSU, he'd have stayed 1 year there, back in the NFL, and Sean staring at him on the other side of the field. And so I can well understand why Green Bay would want to talk to Ryan. If you've been with him any length of time, he is a very winnable personality. He's technically sound. He understands this game very well. Now, he got coached by Coach. Now, he don't have the live wire with him. On the dial, like Ed's like 8.5 to 9.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan's like 3.5. Every once in a while you might get him to the 4, but you're not getting. But he is a really smart coach. So all this bluster about, oh, what a terrible look, and I got to write a column about it. Okay, you're not living in the real world. That's why a guy like Nielsen, other teams are going to come a-knocking. And if he stays with the Saints, watch, he's one and done. Just like if he'd have went to LSU, he'd have been one and done, and he's back, he's a coordinator somewhere in the NFL. And Sean has made it plain also that he thinks that one day Nielsen will be a head coach. And I believe that also. He'll be a head coach somewhere, college or NFL.
Mike D, SaintsReport.com, Mike Detillier.com, Saints News Network over at SI.com. Mike, maybe 60 seconds or 2 minutes or so here. A quick thought on LSU. Signing day was really uneventful. They added Savion Jones, who's a guy I know that you know well, and then Makanaeoli, the offensive lineman out of Florida.
Well, you needed a young lineman, and the young man's either going to play right guard or right tackle. He's going to fill out that 6'4" frame and real fast. He'll be a 300-pounder there. But he's a right-sided guy for me. That's where he's going to play, on the strong side. I think of all the guys that LSU has signed, and depending on how people rate him, I think Savion Jones is the most underrated guy that they have signed. No, when I look at him athletically, he looks like Danielle Hunter, but a bigger version coming out of high school. He is stronger in the lower body. Man, he can run the field. He knows how to use his arms and hands, but it's his pursuit skills against the run. But, man, can he get after the quarterback. And he is so fast to come up the field. He's another guy that I watched train at Camp Mueller with Ernest Harvey there. He got overshadowed on the bayou here. Mason threw a huge blanket here. But, man, I'm telling you, for Savion, it will not take him long, and he's going to make an impact as an edge rusher, and he is a real good one. I mean, a real good one. And I went watch him play basketball, and he has filled out that frame. He's no longer that 225, 230 guy. He's in the 240s, and I'm just telling you, you can mark it. He looks so similar to me physically to Hunter. If he's that type player, now I don't want the Hunter that played at LSU. Right. I want the Hunter that's playing with the Vikings. Yeah, Hunter was close at LSU, and he admits it that maybe I could have put maybe being a little bit harder on myself and got a little stronger in the lower body. Man, I'm just telling you, if there's a guy that's similar to Danielle Hunter, it's him. It's Savion.
Ask Mike, Is this Nick Saban's biggest recruiting class ever?
Yes.
Kevin Monsieur asked Mike, are you surprised Jeff Ireland hasn't been given another opportunity to be a GM in the league by now?
They went younger than Jeff.
Interesting.
And so,
who's not really that old, right?
And he's really not that old. But I'm telling you, it's almost like the real world. Aren't middle-aged guys getting passed over for younger guys?
Yeah.
For a lot of different things. I'm just telling you.
Okay.
Not unless you got money. Then if you out and single, then you're not getting passed over.
Mike, you trip, man. Tomas Pena asked Mike, who should the Saints try to trade to add draft capital?
I'm not sure that you have somebody specifically you would like to trade. Listen, people might not like to hear this, but I'd like to see what I could get from Michael Thomas on a trade. It don't mean I got to trade him. Every year you talk about those sort of scenarios. He would be the one guy that would probably give you the biggest bounty if you were looking. So why wouldn't I at least take a look at that at this stage? But you know what? Sean doesn't value draft picks like the average guy that sends those texts do.
You're right.
Sean's always, I can get draft choices. I'm not worried about that. I would much rather the veteran player than the draft choice in a lot of ways. So just got to remember who's your head coach. And Sean doesn't maybe value draft choices nearly as much as maybe the average fan does.
Ask Mike, you see, what should the Saints do if they lose Drew Brees and Jameis Winston?
Then I would not be surprised they swing this right around and try to get Teddy Bridgewater back.
Wow, that would be interesting.
And him be the bridge. Again, Jameis Winston's going to be the bridge anyway. You convince me he's going to be the guy. You can't convince me. He is the long-term guy for your football team. Will he win you games? Yes. We saw Taysom Hill win games for you. Jameis is going to win games. Man, listen, I ain't playing this game just to win games. I want a championship. So convince me of that. Didn't the Bucs think that last year Jameson's not good enough to lead us nowhere? We got to go out and get a guy. So they went and get an old Pops. Now, he was the best of the Pops
right.
to ever play, but that's what they did. So doesn't that indicate something to you a little bit? Come on, live in the real world. Take that black and gold stuff off you and understand where you're at. Yeah, it looks as though Jameis is in the driver's seat to be the guy. But next year, won't we be talking about this again?
I'll be interested, Mike. You know, I'm a little more curious about Jameis as a long-term potential. Well, I've never stood definitively and said,
put this on tape.
You can. I know you got
it. Back there, Musso,
there.
Put this on tape because a year from now, I'll guarantee you, he's gonna have a different story.
What you mean about Jameis? Where he'll be?
About Jameis, where he'll be?
Yeah.
No, he will win you games, Matt. No question. Is he a special quarterback that you can say, I think he can take us deep into the playoffs, into the Super Bowl?
I think that's undecided. But you and I are going to have that conversation a different day.
Well, it won't take long.
Mike, I also know he was on some garbage teams in Tampa, and I am curious to see what he could do in New Orleans with a loaded roster. So we will have that convo. Mike, enjoy Super Sunday, man. Always appreciate your time. We'll do it again next week.
Thank you, Matt.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.